The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
If you haven't heard this news, it's probably the best Commanders news you've heard in the last 9 hours. According to various reports, the x-rays on Jayden Daniels' dislocated left elbow were negative, no fracture. Now, what that means for his return this year or coming weeks, who knows? But at least that's something positive. Is it going to save the season if he comes back sooner rather than later? Probably not. Even though they're not mathematically out at 3-6 with 4 straight losses, the last 3 by 21 or more, injuries all over the place, a defense that can't stop anybody, an offense that can't really move the ball without Jayden Daniels running. It does not look promising at all. But, okay, at least there's no fracture in the non-throwing elbow for Jayden Daniels. I would imagine if this team were on a playoff trajectory or this was at the end of the season where they were trying to make the playoffs, or certainly if they were in the playoffs, he'd be playing, I would think. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but if there is no fracture, you can tape it up and do whatever you need to do to have him play because it's his non-throwing elbow. But the reality of the situation is this team is a mess top to bottom. And I know we had the unbelievable ride last year to the NFC Championship game, and the feeling was, okay, you knocked on the door, and this year you can knock the damn door down. Nope, the door got slammed in your face, and injuries have played a part for sure, but it's an old team. And when you're living on the edge like they did last year where they win 5 games in their last possession, you can't expect that to continue, and you can't expect the overwhelming good health that they had last year. I mean, they really enjoyed that, and that has not been the case at all this year. And it's, not just Jayden. It's the fact they don't have any weapons. They brought back Noah Brown. He was coming off an injury. They knew about his injury history. That's probably one of the reasons that he was available by Houston, I believe. Houston had cut him the season before this past one, and he gave you the greatest moment last year. He caught the Hail Mary from Jayden Daniels, but the fact is he can't stay healthy. He's been out for most of the season. Terry McLaurin, in making his pitch for a big contract extension, said, hey, I'm different. I haven't been hurt in 5 years. Well, now it's more than likely, it seems, that he'll be out until at least the end of the month, which would include the bye week after they play the Miami Dolphins in a couple of weeks in Barcelona. It's a disgusting situation. It really is. And just to see him walking off the field with his arm in that air cast last night, I guess the initial feel was, oh, that's a broken arm. But then they got to look at the close-ups. It's a pretty gruesome picture. I'm sure you can find it online. But his elbow twisting the wrong way and leaving the field. And it looked like, the whole season went up in smoke. Now, it had already been gone pretty much with this game anyway. And we'll get to the number one question, what the hell is he still doing in the game with the score 38-7 and 7.5 minutes to go? Why is he still out there? We'll get to that, but this was how Quinn opened the news conference last night after the 38-14 loss to Seattle.
For us to have issues that allowed them to have that night are stunning. We couldn't stop them, and we completely stopped ourselves. And so I'm furious, obviously, and into that emotion, but it's also hard to have that. You see the entire team, on a knee, circling up. On Jayden, and who's on the ground after, his injury. So the update on him is he does have a left elbow injury. I'll update you more once I know more, but that's what I know tonight. But what I can say is I can speak for every coach and player, and just unacceptable performance by us tonight. And told the team, we're the one dug the hole, we're the ones that dig it out. The solutions are from within, so we missed it by a mile. We missed the out by a mile.
Yeah, they, again, hurt themselves with penalties. They had 8 of them for 87 yards. They also lost the turnover battle. Again, Jayden threw an interception, and when there was still a glimmer of hope, there was a fumble by Jalen Lane on a kickoff, and it just spiraled from there. The offensive numbers for Seattle are off the charts. 418 total yards, 330 passing. Sam Darnold was spectacular. He completed his first 17 passes and didn't have any pressure on him. I mean, there was absolutely no rush. He wasn't sacked. His quarterback rating 141. It would have been perfect if he hadn't thrown an interception and didn't really need to throw that interception. But he becomes one of the first to throw 4 touchdown passes without throwing an interception. I mean, that's how – I'm sorry, without an incompletion. Never mind an interception, without an incompletion. And, just numbers across the board that would just absolutely blow your mind. Fourth quarterback to do that with 4 touchdowns before his first incompletion. Lamar Jackson did that in 2019. Ryan Tannehill did it in 2015. Might have been with Miami. And Tom Brady, of course, did it in 2007. That was that team that went 16-0 during the regular season, and he went a game with throwing 4 touchdown passes. He had Randy Moss, by the way. There's pretty good receivers on Seattle. There's no Randy Moss, and that was the year that Brady threw 50 touchdown passes. It's more the defense of Washington than anything else. Now, the key question, and this is what not just people around here are asking, but people across the country are saying this. They were saying it on social media. In fact, they were saying it before he got hurt. What the hell was he still doing in the game at that point?
Was there any consideration to not having Jayden go in for that series in which he got injured and having Marcus finish it out?
Yeah, not at the space. I mean, obviously, like the hindsight, you don't want to think that way where, an injury could take place. Obviously we're more conservative in that spot to run and hand off and not have reads to go, but just the end result, Nicky, I'm bummed.
Everybody's, bummed about that, and there's an I told you so. You know who's popped his head out of the ground? This is so rich. Robert Griffin III. Bob Marley, the ghost of Christmas past, on his social media account, watching the game. He's always on it. He's always posting. He has a podcast that he does with his wife. I guess he does some college football games for Fox. He was fired last year from ESPN, I'm told, for making it about himself a little bit too much. Not a little bit, a lot too much. And so, of course, RG3 watching this game with no sense of history, no sense of what actually happened here in 2012. This was his tisk.
All I know is that the emotion of watching him in the game with 7 minutes left in the game, down 38-7. And my first thought is, why is he still in the game? Like, the Seattle Seahawks had the game won. I understand, you want to play to the end, but with the injuries that he's already had this year and the injuries he had last year, why is he in the game? It doesn't make sense. And oh boy.
Well, okay. Bob, remember what happened in 2012. It was Thanksgiving weekend, and I believe with the bye, or maybe not, whatever it was, there weren't many games left in the season. And you collided with Haloti Ngata, and your knee bent the wrong way. I was told that was a 4-week injury. You were talking that week about coming back, and they chose to keep you out. And you got in a snit about that. You even, before the game against Cleveland, ran all over the field to show everybody you could go. And I've been told that RG3 and Dan Snyder went to Mike Shanahan and said, look, he can go, he can run, put him in. And Shanahan said, no, he doesn't practice all week. We're going to go with Kirk. They played Kirk, and you had to get back. He could barely walk. They managed to beat a bad Philadelphia team with Alfred Morris running for a bunch of yards. RG3 limped through that. In the final game of the season, when they had to beat Dallas, Alfred had 200 yards in that game. And then, insisting that he play and stay in the game against Seattle. Let's remember that. He started against Seattle, and they scored a touchdown. And just before they did that, in almost the exact same area that the elbow went the wrong way for Jayden Daniels last night, RG3's knee twisted. It didn't put him out of the game. He insisted on staying in. He was limping all over the field. And at halftime, they wanted to take him out. And he refused to come out. Was screaming in the locker room. So Shanahan relented, kept him in the game. now we have, all these years later, Robert Griffin III with the benefit of wonderful hindsight in looking at what happened last night.
This is why I wanted them to hold him out till after the bye week. Just let him get fully healthy and attack the back half of the season as close to 100% as possible. No. You can't say a knee and a hamstring leads to an elbow injury like that. It was a freak accident, freak play. But I can't help but feel for Jayden Daniels, man. I can't help but feel for Washington Commanders fans. Just demoralizing blow, man.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, Bobby, you know, we could all go to school on you and realize what happened here. There's also the mindset of this, and it's a lot different than most people can understand. And I've seen this over the years, both ways. You know, what's a quarterback doing in a game that's lopsided in their favor? Why is he still playing? You can make an easier case to take him out there. The game's over. The other side of it is this is your leader, and the leader stays in the game. I've seen this time and time again, and Connor Orr writes about this today at SI.com. He says the outside world where injuries are not thought of as the same way as inside the building. Speaking an injury into existence, he said, or using the threat of a possible injury as a precursor to make a decision is akin to reminding a pitcher just how close he is to a perfect game. There is a mysticism around it, and the lengths that some players go physically, emotionally, superstitiously to ward off the very negative thought of bodily harm would boggle your mind. He points out Nick Sirianni did bench Saquon Barkley just shy of breaking the single-season rushing record last year as they were headed into the playoffs. But Jared Goff was throwing passes up 52-21 on the Bears in Week 2. Caleb Williams was throwing passes down 45-21. Josh Allen was still in the game against the Jets the same week, up 30-3 after nearly breaking his nose. The following week, Carson Wentz and Jake Browning, game starters, believe it or not, were both still in at 48-3. In the Colts' 40-6 blowout of the Raiders, both Daniel Jones and Geno Smith were in the game with the score 40-3. Patrick Mahomes, also in a blowout of the Raiders, was scrambling, throwing passes and get knocked on his backside while up 28 points. Justin Herbert getting pummeled while up 24 in the Vikings with less than 9 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Joe Milton came in at the end of last week's Broncos-Cowboys blowout, though Dak Prescott, an established veteran in his 30s, not a second-year quarterback, desperately trying to prove that last year wasn't a fluke, and there may be a part of that in this as well. Remember the Thursday night game. Lamar Jackson, who hadn't been healthy in 4 weeks, running all over the place. Derrick Henry, 13 offensive plays while Baltimore was up 22 points. He says hyper-intense and competitive people who, because of their intensity and competitiveness, made it to the absolute pinnacle of the sport, simply wanted to continue playing football and appeal to the also disgustingly competitive head coach, a man who cares about winning preseason games and who, in order to have achieved his position, had been blinded for decades as a societally proper way to tap out. In short, Dan Quinn and Daniels were never going to think like this because they're not like us. Most of the time, that's a good thing. So you do understand this, Bobby. The problem with you, Bobby, is you want to have an excuse to go, oh, look at them. Well, look at you. And let's not forget what happened here. There's also the view of a couple of ex-coaches on this. Herman Edwards last night on ESPN looked at the decision to keep him in the game. And Herman Edwards coached Jayden Daniels for the first couple of years of his career at Arizona State. Here was his take on why they kept him in the game.
Knowing Jayden, yeah, he wanted to be out there. But that's not his decision when it comes to something like this. Right. You basically have to say, hey, look, we're going to put Mariota in. You know, next week is next week. That was not the case. I'm not saying the coach was wrong, but knowing Jayden, he wanted to finish the game with his team. That's just how the kid's built. Is that also a product of he has missed games already this season with injury, so I need to be there? That has something to do with it, but knowing Jayden like I know him, he's a competitive guy. He always thinks he has a chance, right? When that score got away from him early, but he just kept fighting, and all of a sudden they scored a couple touchdowns. He just felt like I could bring the team back. You hate to see this. I mean, he's been injured. This is his third injury this year already. Right.
So there's that from Herman Edwards. There is also the view from the NBC crew. And Zach Collinsworth leading the discussion as to the decision to keep Jayden in the game. And you might be surprised at a Super Bowl winning coach in Tony Dungy and how he felt about the decision.
Well, I actually don't have a problem with him being in the game at that time. He's a competitor. He wanted to be out there. The problem and what they're going to have to get solved, this is the way Jayden Daniels plays. He's competitive. He runs. He doesn't slide. He doesn't always run out of bounds. He took hits last year. We were talking about it. He took a bunch of hits tonight. That's just the way he plays, and that's what I think they're going to have to be concerned with.
Well, for me, he got a chance to play over 3 quarters. He didn't have to play in that 4th quarter. And like I said before, he came back and showed so much heart and resilience coming back actually playing in this game, because I thought they was trying to rush him to play in this game. But he should have never been in the game in a situation like that. You put the backup in, you say, hey, guys, we're going to get healthy and we're going to prepare for next week. And that's what they should have done.
Even since he's been dealing with those injuries, going all the way back to week 2, first it was the knee, then it was the ham. He doesn't change it for you?
I talked to him. I talked to the offensive coaches tonight. I'm totally healthy. I'm not on a pitch count. We're not calling the game any differently. They went in feeling like he was totally healthy. And do you take your starting quarterback out when it's 31-7,
yes,
38-7?
100%.
Peyton Manning, if I asked him to come out at that point, he's going to look me in the eye and say, I'm not coming out.
Yeah, of course he would. And look, I would be on board. I felt this at the moment. I even felt it watching him on that drive. Even though they were trying to get more than 7 points in the game was over. He should have been out of the game. And he had missed the previous game with a hamstring injury. Do you want to have a re-injury like you'd had with Terry McLaurin on Monday night in the loss in Kansas City? You take him out of the game. But, again, that's not the way they think. And if you talk to football players, the way they think inside the building, not just for this but for everything, is a lot different. I remember we did Darryl Green's radio show the last 2 years of his career. It was the Marty Schottenheimer year, which started off as a disaster. They wound up finishing 8-8. And the first year of Steve Spurrier, which was 7-9, not too good, not as bad as 5-11. But when we would talk to him about how the team was falling apart, he said, we don't sense that inside the building. That's not how they think. Now, as for the play that he got hurt on, I don't know if this is actually a defense from Dan Quinn. You know, my feeling is if you got to keep him in the game, make sure that he doesn't move at all. Just hand off. You know, you're running out the clock anyway at that point. Yeah, you're trying to score, but the most important thing is to get that game over with. It's over. On the scoreboard, it's over. You're down 31 points. Here's Quinn on the play that they called and what ultimately happened with the injury.
Gutted by it, just bummed. We didn't have any read plays on it, and the one that he was on injured is, usually a runner or a throw to the flats, not a scramble. So it wasn't a designed read or play, into that spot. If we run it, 50 times, it's either a handoff or a throw, I'd say 50 times. So it's a bummer, man, in a big way.
Yeah, well, the problem with it is they have to look at the injuries that he's had this year. He's had 3 of them. He had a couple of injuries last year, didn't cause him to miss a start, but we later found out he played with a broken rib. Remember the first game he ever played for Washington? It was a loss at Tampa, and he ran the ball 16 times, and I said, that guy is not going to last. And he did. He made 20 starts last year. This year, he's already missed 3. He's certainly going to miss 4. And beyond that, we may know something more today after Dan Quinn discusses the X-ray on the elbow. But again, the reports are there's no fracture, so it's a non-throwing elbow. It's conceivable he's back this season, maybe even before the bye. We'll have to see. They could be possibly playing in a couple of weeks in Barcelona. But in discussing this in his column today, Barry Zerluga makes a couple of points about all this and the handling of Jayden Daniels. He says it's in-the-moment pragmatism, asset management in real time. It's part of Quinn's job. The devastation in a library-quiet Commanders locker room afterwards was because this team has lost 4 in a row, the past 3 by at least 3 touchdowns. We have reached a new phase in the tenure of Quinn and general manager Adam Peters. And I'm already seeing things on social media, fire them both. No, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. The guy took him to the NFC Championship game last year. But now for the first time, because we were all like blown away. Oh, look at this. They're winning games. Look at this 2-step that they did. They won on Monday night in Cincinnati against Joe Burrow, and then went on the road and won in Arizona the following. Maybe we got something here. And this kid looks special. Now, he still looks special, but there's so much falling apart around him that we have this issue. More from Barry. In a euphoric romp to the NFC Championship game a year ago, a season in which Daniels was the second pick of the draft, the only choice for Rookie of the Year, an absolute rocket ship, neither coach nor exec could do much wrong. Now, with two teams taking a collective knee as medical personnel tended to an ailing Daniels in the moment when backup Marcus Mariota should have been the game, it's fair to question how the entire operation handles its star. He points out they're playing without weapons. Terry McLaurin is hurt. Even Luke McCaffrey, who probably would have been their number one receiver last night, got hurt on the opening kickoff, hurt his shoulder, missed the rest of the game. He may go on IR also. He could have a season-ending injury. We don't know. He also writes, this is more from Barry in his column today, it's remarkable how quickly fissures have developed in this entire operation. Daniels is still a treasure, a mix of talent and dedication and poise that is rare. Optimism should follow him everywhere he goes. The injury is to his left elbow, throws with his right arm. Okay, there's optimism on that. There's also, now since this has been written, reports that there's no fracture, so that could mean an earlier return with, again, the non-throwing elbow. But, as Barry writes, when he came to Washington after a Heisman Trophy-winning season at LSU, the chief question mark about him had to be his durability. He is slight. He likes to run, both by design and when plays break down. Could he hold up over a career? 20 starts as a rookie beat back those questions. That leaves now an offseason filled with wondering about when he's fully healthy for training camp, about whether he's learned to take risk when he has the ball and when to bail, and whether the team has developed ways to manage his usage. Whether he comes back in 2 weeks or he misses the rest of the season, those are going to be questions. And as Barry concludes the column, Dan Quinn has a lot to digest coming out of his worst loss as a Commanders coach. He'll say it's about getting his team to develop its identity and correct its mistakes, but it has to eat at him that the players who remain will be doing it without their most talented colleague, all because he kept Jayden Daniels in a game he had no business being in, and a season that already was spiraling is now lost because of it. And it's not lost because Jayden Daniels got hurt. I think if he'd remained healthy the rest of the game, you'd have to look at the record, which is now 3-6 with 4 straight losses, the last 3 by 21 points. And the rest of the schedule, which they are already 7.5-point underdogs against Detroit coming here next Sunday. Miami at least has proven they can score some points. It's in Barcelona. Who knows what happens there? Then you got the bye, but a Denver team that's on the come. They're looking really good right now. Denver's going to be here for a Sunday night game on November the 30th. They're at Minnesota. The Giants are here. Then they have 2 against Philadelphia wrapped around a Dallas game. Of these 8 games left, I can only see maybe 3 realistic wins. Maybe they beat Miami and Barcelona. Maybe they beat the Giants here, and maybe the Eagles aren't playing for anything at the end of the year and resting everybody. Those are my 3 wins, and 6 wins was not what anybody signed up for this year. So it's a gloomy Monday. The weather's supposed to be great. It's supposed to be mid-60s, but it feels gloomy, and the only bright side is that, according to reports, no fracture in Jayden Daniels' elbow. Coming up, we'll get to, what was a fun part of last night. Did like the uniforms. And at halftime, Art Monk had his number retired. So there was a little bit of positiveness coming out of Landover last night. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Hey, if you're just jumping in your car, we're starting to get reports on the injuries from last night, most notably Jayden Daniels, and it is a good report that we're getting so far. Now, we may get a further update on this from Dan Quinn this afternoon or maybe further in the week, but the initial reports are no fracture in his left elbow, dislocation, which should speed up his return to the field. Now, when that's going to be, we don't know, but he doesn't have weapons. It doesn't look like they're going to have Terry McLaurin back before the bye, which would be the 3rd week of November. And now the guy who was supposed to be their top receiver with the injury to Terry and Noah Brown is Luke McCaffrey. And Luke McCaffrey returned the opening kickoff last night. Turns out he broke his collarbone, and that's probably going to put him on injured reserve for at least a month, maybe more than that. He's second in the league in kickoff return yardage and second on the team in receiving averaging 18.5 yards a catch. So he's the closest thing they got to a deep threat right now with Terry McLaurin on the shelf. So not only do you not have your trigger man, you don't have any weapons, and they'll have to roll with Marcus Mariota. At least, I would think, at least for the next couple of weeks, I would think that they would not in any way try to get, even with the positive reports on the elbow, they would have any way that they would try and get him back for the Miami game in a couple of weeks. I just don't see that happening. Now, there was some positives last night. One, the uniforms looked really good, right? They looked pretty good feeling seeing that team out on the field in those uniforms. Of course, the good feelings didn't last very long as they were getting their butts kicked down 28-0, and it was 28-7 at the half, and people were already clearing out. I don't know. There probably were some who weren't around to see what last night was supposed to be a lot about, and that was honoring Art Monk. Art Monk, and I was at the induction ceremony in Canton when he went in. I think it was 2008. He and Darryl Green went in the same year, and Darryl got a really nice ovation. Art Monk got a 4-minute ovation, which to this day is considered to be the longest ovation in the history of Hall of Fame inductions. And so he's beloved. He is. And he didn't have much to say as a player. And as you'll hear, didn't have much to say last night when they officially retired his number. But Josh Harris was down on the field at halftime, and they had a nice ceremony set up. Chick Hernandez emceed it. And Harris gave his and it's interesting to hear what he opened up with. It's kind of an elbow to Dan Snyder. I think so. Listen to what Josh Harris said as they retired number 81.
All right, hello, Commanders faithful. We're here to do something we should have done a long time ago, and that is to retire the number 81, Art Monk from Syracuse, and put it right up there. It will never be worn again. 3-time Super Bowl champion, Hall of Famers don't grow on trees. But everyone who knows Art knows it wasn't just him as a football player, but him as a person, a great man, and a leader. Art, we are so happy you're with us. And on behalf of this entire organization, thank you. We are proud to honor you. And as you know, you're welcome here at Northwest Stadium anytime. But we can't wait to honor you in your house in 2030, RFK Stadium. Now let's go, and let's raise that banner, that flag, right up there.
Josh Harris. Should have been done a long time ago. Also talking about the stadium, my buddy Tom Lavero tweeted this out last night. He said it's a good thing they got the stadium deal done when they did. Can you imagine trying to pitch it today after the 3 straight losses by 21 or more, 4 straight losses in a season that's going down the tube? Now, Art Monk didn't have much to say as a player. He was difficult to find in the locker room after games, even when he had big games. He just didn't like the limelight. It wasn't that he was a bad guy. He just didn't like the attention. He was very much an introvert and still is. And this is about all you could get at him last night as number 81 went up in the, not the rafters, but up the flagpole at Northwest Stadium.
Good evening, Commander fans. Never in my wildest dreams did I ever anticipate something like this happening to me. Having my jersey retired is a very special honor, and I am so thankful. But I also owe a lot to all the members of my team that I played with in the course of those years. They also played a big part in my success and helping me do my job to the best of my ability. And my coaches as well, who put me in positions that allowed me to succeed. So thank you. really all I know how to say right now.
Let's hear it one more time for the legendary number 81, Art Monk. Yeah, it's not like he stayed up late writing that speech, but that's really Art Monk. That's classic Art Monk. You just don't get much out of him. Sixth former player to have his number retired by the team. For the longest time, Sammy Baugh in 33 was the only number officially retired by the team. I remember this came up when they got Dwayne Thomas in 1974, and Thomas had worn 33 with the Cowboys, and I said, no, we've retired that. So he wore 47. And then, for decades and decades, there was no official number retirement. They just didn't give them out. And one of the really sad things happened when Steve Spurrier took over. If you remember this, they came out for a mini camp practice, and Danny Werfel was wearing 7, and Shane Matthews was wearing 9. And people went, well, wait a minute. You're wearing Sonny Jurgensen and Joe Theismann's numbers? You got to be kidding me. And so Spurrier relented. They went away. But a backup tight end named Leonard Stevens was wearing 49. And that was a disgrace. I let people in the organization know about it. They never responded to it. And the player wore it the rest of the year. At the end of the year, Bobby Mitchell retired after, I think, 50 years of the organization, including as a player and working in the front office. And he said that was the final insult. He said, I was an intern here for over 30 years, and it was really too bad. With this retirement, this is the first of the 6 where the player didn't finish his career here. If you remember this, when Richie Pettibone took over in 1993 after Joe Gibbs retired the first time, he was a defensive guy. I don't know if he was in love with Art Monk. Art Monk wanted more money than they wanted to pay. The difference wasn't that much, but the salary cap was coming in, and he wound up going to the Jets, and it was too bad. He'd broken the receiving record for catches, total catches, the year before, 1992, but in 93, when he broke the record for most consecutive games with one catch, he did it in a Jets uniform, and even played one more year with the Philadelphia Eagles. So of these number retirements, the Sean Taylor one, of course, is absolutely tragic. He was of course murdered in a horrible thing in 2007. But the others did finish their careers here. Sammy Baugh played all of his career here. Bobby Mitchell did not start here. He was traded here from Cleveland. Sonny Jurgensen was traded here from Philadelphia. Darrell Green played all 20 years with this team. And Art Monk, I guess, is the only one of the players to play for 3 teams, right? Played for 3 teams. And I just remember how bad people felt about that when he was wearing green and he broke the more important record, I guess. It's since been obliterated by Jerry Rice and others. But when he got to, I forget, it was 930 or something like that, or whatever it was, he finished his career with 940, whatever the number was, to break the all-time record, which was then held by Steve Largent, happened on a Monday night game against the Denver Broncos. And people love him. It's you don't have to talk your head off to get people to like you. And Art Monk was just a beacon of consistency. And he didn't get hurt very often, though when he did, this was a very famous part of his legacy here in Washington as well. That 1982 season, when they played only 9 regular season games because of the strike, and Washington went 8-1, and they got to play 3 playoff games at home, or they had a tournament, and so they won out in that, and then they went to the Super Bowl. The Fun Bunch was started because of Art Monk. The Fun Bunch was a tribute to Monk, who got hurt, I believe, in the last regular season game and couldn't participate in the playoffs. He had a broken foot. And so when a player would score a touchdown, they would go out on the field and give a group high five. And Doc Walker was a part of this. He was a tight end, not a receiver. He was known as part of the Fun Bunch, and he was also known as part of the Hogs because he was also a blocking tight end as well. But, Art Monk was really the genesis of the Fun Bunch, if you don't know that. that was a tribute to him. Like, hey, we scored a touchdown here, but we want you to know, Art, you're our best receiver here. And the only one to go in the Hall of Fame from that group, they also had Ricky Sanders and Gary Clark, who I think should get consideration for the Hall of Fame. They were both there last night to help pay tribute to Art Monk. But very fitting that his entire speech in accepting the honor of having his number retired lasted like a minute and 20 seconds. That's Art Monk in a nutshell. All right, coming up in the next hour, more on the number one question in town today. What the hell was Jayden Daniels still doing in the game with his team down 31? Best World Series ever? It's in the discussion. Worst Commanders loss of the season? There is no discussion. It was horrible last night. And it may be time to throw in the towel on the season. And who knows about Jayden Daniels, though the initial reports are somewhat positive. I guess as positive as they could possibly be after what looked like a gruesome injury last night. It's a mess right now. It's really a mess. And hard to believe after the season from last year that the natives are getting restless. They're calling for the head of Dan Quinn. Are you kidding me? Yeah, check social media. People want him fired for, now as I put it, coaching malpractice. But that doesn't mean I want him fired. I just thought that, with the score being what it was, that Jayden Daniels had no business being out on the field. They were down 31 points. Sure, he was driving them, and there's pride and all that. But, no, you just don't risk it there. But that's not the way that people think. Inside the building. Outside the building like us, go, bubble wrap him, make sure he's not on the field. But that's not how they think, and there's a lot of this that goes on, the battlefield mentality. Like, he's the leader of the men, and he's not going to abandon his men. Well, they're still out there battling because you can't sub out everybody. There's 53 men on a roster, and you lose some during the course of a game. There's one or two backup linemen available. It's not like high school where they put in the whole second string and you have a roster of in college, 100 people. It's not like that. So, so when you pull him out of the game, it's a little different than you might think. So that's what happened last night. Luke McCaffrey also, latest reports are broken collarbone. He was hurt on the opening kickoff last night, didn't play the rest of the game. Is their second leading receiver, and really their biggest deep threat without Terry McLaurin, who's I would be surprised if we see him next week against Detroit or even against Miami the week after that in Barcelona. So they're in a bad situation here. But the main question that people are asking today is, why the hell Jayden Daniels coming off 2 injuries this year, one a knee, which kept him out 2 weeks, and the other a hamstring, which kept him out last week. Why was he still in the game at that point? Here's the coach, Dan Quinn.
Was there any consideration to not having Jayden go in for that series in which he got injured and having Marcus finished out?
Yeah, not at the space. I mean, obviously, like the hindsight, you don't want to think that way where, an injury could take place. Obviously we're more conservative in that spot to, run and hand off and not have reads to go. But just the end result, Nicky, obviously I'm bummed.
Yeah, of course, everybody's bummed about that, and this isn't really an excuse by Quinn, but it's a description of the play that he got hurt on. It sounds like to me that Jayden was given some instructions on, let's not go crazy here, but his instincts took over. This is Quinn on the play that knocked Daniels out of the game.
Gutted by it, just bummed. We didn't have any read plays on it, and the one that he was on injured is, usually a runner or a throw to the flat. It's not a scramble. So it wasn't a designed read or play, into that spot. If we run it, 50 times, it's either a handoff or a throw, I'd say 50 times. So it's a bummer, man, in a big way.
Really a bummer for the offensive lineman whose job it is to keep number 5 upright. Sam Cosme, one of the few that was willing to talk to reporters after this mess.
Gut-wrenching. I mean, you can just hear the air take out everybody in the stadium. I mean, it's just not a good feeling to see that, for sure. So it really sucks. Yeah.
This isn't the game you guys wanted. Just kind of what do you take from the game itself, I guess?
We got our asses kicked. That's just that simple in all 3 phases. early on. So we dug ourselves a hole, and it was just really hard to get out of there. So, yeah, they did a heck of a job. We didn't start fast on all three phases and just didn't do good.
Sam Cosme, who says he's gutted by this, more locker room reaction. Linebacker Frankie Louvu.
He's a special kid, and to see him go down like that and been out there for a long time is like, it's scary. You know what I mean? But he stood up on his own 2 feet and he walked off the field, and that's somebody you can play with. Man, he's a true dog, and I'm going every Sunday with him.
Is that a silver lining that he didn't hurt his leg? Because it did look like the way he was rolling around on the ground. I couldn't tell it was an elbow injury. I think they went to commercial right after that. We found out that that's what it was, and they were taking him off with an air cast, which when I saw that, I thought broken arm. I'm certainly not a doctor, but I've seen dislocated elbows, and they'll hold it in place. But this looked like a season-ending broken arm. Let's put it that way. It doesn't appear to be that. There's no fracture, but it is a serious injury. This is a linebacker mate, and this is when they didn't really know the severity of the injury. Maybe this is somewhat uplifting to find out that it's not fractured. Linebacker Bobby Wagner.
This is pray time, you know what I'm saying? This is pray and let him feel the emotions that he's feeling, and just send a lot of positivity out there. I'm close with him, obviously. Whatever it is, I'll help him the best way I can. But that's all we can do in this moment is just pray and hope for the best.
Yeah, that's a grizzled veteran. And so is Zach Ertz, who's been around. He's been playing in the league 12, 13 years. And he actually got pretty emotional about this. This was Ertz asked what he would say to Jayden.
Not much, just tell him I love him. He means a lot to me, obviously, as a person, as a friend. So that's the person I care about the most. Like, the football player is awesome, obviously, phenomenal, one of the best players in the league, but I care more about the person than the player. So for me, it's just making sure he's okay, knowing that we're with him, that I'm with him, just encouraging him as much as I can.
Okay, so that's Zach Ertz. Now, we get to this question. This is a quarterback who came into the league with concerns about size, that he's 205 pounds. Now, that's the same weight as Lamar Jackson, but he's willowy, and he looks like a kind of guy that could get broken in two. And the fear was that he was running too much, which he did in the opening game last year against Tampa. And as the season wore on, he was going to be knocked out. He was going to miss games. He made every start. He got knocked out of the Carolina game with, as it turned out, a broken rib. He came back. He played. He threw the Hail Mary against the Bears, and they're often running in a magical season. But the reality is this is a quarterback who has been injured in 3 games this year, 3 different injuries, one to his knee, the other one to his hamstring, and now this to his elbow. And this is a legitimate concern raised by David Aldridge last night in the locker room.
Jayden's been hurt 3 straight times in 3 straight games. Does this organization have to take a different approach with him with regard to keeping him on the field, even if a game's lost, or you think there's a chance, even if you think there's still a chance to win, if it's not capable of giving him the support he needs on the offense and the defensive side for him to be at his best?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is we will give him the support to do that. And I'm certain of that, Dave, to make sure that we do that in every single way. And that's calls, offense, defense, like the whole way through, man. I absolutely feel that way on, the hamstring injury, and so tonight with an elbow. Yeah, it's really important we get that part right, and we will.
Yeah. Well, here's a question, and we could find out something about this today. We may not. Joe Witt, defensive coordinator, is his first time around as a defensive coordinator, including last year. He came here with Quinn from Dallas, where he was the secondary coach, and he's been coaching in the league a long time, but this is his highest level at defensive coordinator. And again, gives great sound bites. Sounds like you would want a coach to sound. He does one thing that's a little disturbing to me, as he talks about all the close calls they've had. Well, that's football. It's a game of inches, as you know. And so when you talk about, we almost did this, we almost did that, yeah, but you didn't. And it doesn't matter how close it was to not happening, it didn't happen. And I just wonder, because we'll see this, sometimes a coach will even get pressure from ownership. I I don't know if there's going to be anything from ownership on this. We don't know about that. The owner comes in with a different mindset, certainly. Josh Harris, and he's not going to meddle, it doesn't appear. But, does he say, hey, look, our defense right now is terrible. This is arguably the worst defense in the league. The other contenders are Cincinnati. And if you saw that wild game with Chicago yesterday, they were unbelievably bad. There were, I think, 89 points scored in that game, with the Bears just needing a field goal to win it, coming down and scoring a touchdown against just a hapless defense. Joe Flacco in for Burrow was great. He threw 4 touchdown passes. Defense abysmal. Dallas's defense is bad, but their offense is good enough to keep them in games. This defense is abysmal. Could that happen? And how does that jive with what Quinn preaches all the time, the brotherhood, the culture? And you look at this game, there's just, as he said, they didn't give themselves any chance to win. They lost the turnover battle 2-1. They couldn't stop the last night Seattle. Seattle had over 400 yards of offense. They did what they wanted to do. We did. It's now 1 sack for Washington, hardly any pressure, all those things. Was it the fact that the players aren't playing well enough? And is it any way related to the culture that he's always talking about?
I certainly don't think culturally is where I would look. It's a connected team. It's performance related, not culturally related. Guys, care, working at it, good teammates. So, I think you're barking up the wrong tree on that space, but you're not when we say about the performance. So I understand the question, but this is performance related, and we've got to get it fixed.
And it's performance related, and as he says, got to get it fixed. This is the kind of game where people get fired. And I'm not suggesting that it's definite they're going to fire Joe Witt, but that's got to be in play. That has to be discussed. And Dan Quinn is a defensive coordinator. Could he take over the defensive play calling? He may have to. It may have reached that because you're at that point in the season. There's still a glimmer of hope, But in the RG3 season, they were 3-6, and they won their last 7 games and won the division. Could that happen again? Probably not. And you look at the rest of the schedule, it includes 2 against Philadelphia. They've got a Denver team coming here that's good. They got a Detroit team that's going to be plenty pissed off from what happened last year in the playoffs. So running the table from here doesn't look good. But as Quinn said, he's got a team, including the defense, which is now taking a step forward and a step back.
The consistency is what I'm searching for. Last week I thought we took, 2 steps forward, and tonight 3 steps back. And that's a terrible recipe. When you move forward, then you move forward again, then you move forward again. And so when you don't keep stacking those, it gets harder. But offensively, we didn't hit the marks either. And so playing together, back and forth, that's how we've got to do it. But, yeah, we were definitely, disappointed to see, the ops that took place tonight, because it was there for us. And so when you beat yourself, man, it is as hard as it gets. In some ways, it's worse than the gut-wrenching loss that happens at the end because you missed chances to do your thing. And so both of them suck, but missing the ops to play well, as a coach, that obviously, you got to find better solutions for the players.
I was thinking about a couple of comps for what this season seems to be unfolding like. One of them is baseball, and I don't know if this is a comp in any way, but when the Expos moved here in 2005 and became the Nationals, they had some pretty decent veterans on that team, and the reason was that there was discussion about folding the Expos, that they were owned by Major League Baseball. They weren't going to make it in Montreal, and they were just going to contract the team. And they had Frank Robinson as the manager, the old school Frank Robinson, great manager, great person. And they were just going to ride it out and get as many people to go to the games in Montreal and then just fold the team, just get rid of it. And that they had traded prospects for older players. So they come here, and everybody knew they had to rebuild the farm system. But the team started out great. They were 4th of July. They were in first place by, I think, 4 games or 5 games over the Mets. And then they wound up finishing 500. They really weren't that good. I also look at the 93 Redskins. And in 1993, this was not until March, that Joe Gibbs retired. It was a stunner. They had won the Super Bowl 2 years before. They had struggled in the 92 season, but they made the playoffs. They even won a playoff game. They won at Detroit, and they lost to San Francisco. San Francisco wound up playing Dallas for the NFC Championship that year. That was a good team, and they had a chance to win that game. There was a play where Brian Mitchell could have scored easily, but there was a fumble on the handoff with Mark Rippon. San Francisco recovered. They won the game. So comes 1993 with Gibbs retiring after that season. They were only 2 years removed, one full season removed from winning the Super Bowl. Not all, but many of the veterans were still there. Mark Rippon, the Super Bowl MVP, was there. They were older, but some of the Hogs were still playing. Jeff Bostic was there. Joe Jacoby, Russ Grimm had retired, but there was a nucleus there. Monty Coleman, Darrell Green. There were guys still on this team who had rings. And Richie Pettibone took over and said business as usual. And this is totally different because this is only the second year of this regime, and it followed up just an absolute disaster for almost a quarter century under Dan Snyder. But the optimism of this year off of last year was similar, like, oh, okay, we made it to the NFC Championship game, and now we can take the next step this year, and we got a great quarterback under a rookie deal, and look what happened with Seattle when they had Russell Wilson like this, and yada, 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 yada. And it's unraveled. And it was an old team in 1993. It's the oldest team in the league right now. Injuries are killing them. Injuries killed the 93 team as well. And I was just looking back at how that season started with the Cowboys, and they were in disarray because Emmitt Smith was a holdout, and Richie's team won 35-16. Tom Boswell famously wrote a column, hey, Joe Gibbs was handicapping the offense. Look at what they can do with Richie, 35 points. And then they went through a stretch that was absolutely devastating for a coach who had waited so long. Richie was the offensive coordinator here, I think even before, or defensive coordinator, even before Gibbs. So it was like 12 or 13 years that he had been running the defense and was great at it. If they gave Hall of Fame nominations for coordinators, he would be nominated. He was that good. But they just fell apart. They lost to Phoenix. They were the Phoenix Cardinals then. They lost at RFK 17-10. I think Rippon got hurt in that game. They had a shootout with Philadelphia, which they lost 34-31. They played at Miami on a Monday night. They lost 17-10. And then the wheels just fell off at a similar time. October 10th, they played the Giants at RFK. They lost 41-7. The following week, they played the Cardinals again, this time on the road. They lost 36-6. They lost to Buffalo 24-10. They gave the Colts a good game, and they beat the Colts with a bad Colts team. They won 34-24, but at that point, they were 2-6 at that point. And they only won 2 games the rest of the year. They were just too beat up, too old, too beat up. And poor Richie, couldn't get things going. They had a couple of last hurrahs. They won a game that surprised people. They beat a Falcons team late in the year, 30-17. They won at Tampa, which was a bad team. But that was it. The rest of them, the Jets game that they lost December 11th, 3-0, that's one of the worst games ever played. They lost at Dallas, and Dallas was Super Bowl bound that year, but they lost 38-3. And then finally, the last game of the season, here's how bad it was. They didn't even have people show up at RFK Stadium. The announced attendance was 42,000 for 55, which used to be, it was a packed house for every game. And it wasn't then. So I just look at that season and look at the way this one is unfolding. Different circumstances with coaches, obviously. Dan Quinn has not only had success here last year, he took an Atlanta team to the Super Bowl, probably should have been able to close that out, wasn't able to do it against Tom Brady and the Patriots. And I just see a similar unfolding here. Old team, beat-up team, and they're running out of players, and they seem to be demoralized at this point. I think you could tell it from Quinn's demeanor yesterday. You could certainly tell it from the players in the locker room. And if they can somehow resuscitate themselves from this, it'll be a miracle. But this season, to me, looks like with 8 games to go, the only winnable games, at least this, and who knows how the schedule plays out, and you do have upsets along the way. But 7.5-point underdogs at home against Detroit. So if they lose that, they're 3-7, right? And then they go play Miami, Barcelona. Maybe they win that, so it's 4-7. They get Denver at home. They'll be underdogs for that. They'll be underdogs at Minnesota. Giants game, who knows when they get to it at that point. And then they got 2 games against Philadelphia wrapped around a game against Dallas. I don't know if any of those are winnable. So 6 wins, 5, 6, maybe 7 wins, the most optimistic. That's what's in play right now, and it's maybe going to take you 10 to get to the playoffs. They've already lost more games this year than they lost all of last year. They lost 5 last season. They've lost 6 already. It's not a happy day in Mudville. It is not. All right, we'll find out more about the injuries today. I'll talk about that tomorrow. Bram may have some more on that coming up next, and I will see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.